Hello students, welcome to the series on marketing and retail business. Today we are going to study outsourcing, its concept and importance. Now let us study the objective of this lecture. In this lecture, we will study the concept and definition of outsourcing, the advantages and the challenges of outsourcing. Now let us study the definition of outsourcing, where outsourcing is an agreement. Outsourcing is an agreement where a big company hires another company to perform the existing internal activity. It involves contracting of business process related to operational and non-core functions. The non-core functions can be manufacturing facility and management call centers. Outsourcing in this modern era is a buzzword, where most of the modern organizations are using this concept to streamline their functions. The diversification of the labor cost, the diversity and the specialization of work functions has forced companies to pick and choose the best specializations available at low cost. So, wherever in the world the best functions are available at a cost which is affordable company, they are outsourced. Outsourcing and transformation. Outsourcing involves transferring employees and assets from one firm to another. Outsourcing is procurement of services from a third party. It makes use of integrated process, organization models and information systems. Now, sometimes it happens that companies specializations in one function. Maybe it is a manufacturing company which is designing best of the car. So, they specialize in engineering aspects where they make good models, but they are not specialists in IT functions. So, they will move to IT firms and IT companies to give them the best support for their online sales, connections and MIS, that is the information systems. So, if you hire these functions from outside agencies, they will give you a wide variety and array of specializations which is designed by best of professionals, collected, trained and done in a cost which is affordable for the company. Now, outsourcing reduces and controls operating cost. It helps to gain access to excellent services. It helps in using internal resources for other purposes. It is time consuming functions which can be outsourced to clay the functions and increase the use of external resources to give more innovation and creativity. So, when you outsource functions, obviously it will be more production capacity for your firm to look to your own functions and transform the complicated functions to the other firms. So, the internal resources which are free can be used for your core specializations. It is you generally outsource the non-core functions or the functions where you are not competent. You try to buy the best functions where you get more design, more variety, more innovation and more creativity. Now, what are the objectives of outsourcing? Let us study them. It is access to best processes to build quality and efficiency. It is connecting to updated technologies. It is to develop good customer relations, to build supplier relations, to free up the management time and to create and build competencies. It is to decrease the operating cost by expanding the service base. Now, the basic objective of outsourcing is always to lower the cost which is inculcated within the organization. The cost of the operations may be very high, but to make up the setups, to create organizations and to coordinate is a big function. So, there are certain things where you cannot perform yourself. There are legal functions, there are accounting functions, there are auditing functions where you have advisory and consulting firms available in market who have the best of professionals who work in a coordinated and in a connected way with other organizations also. So, it is not forte of many firms to look into the litigations, to look into the service aspects and to look into the maintenance aspects. So, we basically outsource these functions to very knowledgeable companies like you have McKinsey, Gartner and Deloitte companies where they are advisory and consultancy firms who take up big projects from companies and give them the legal support and give them the basic audit support also to design the functions in the best possible way. Pros of outsource: it basically saves your cost to more than 80%. It can give attention to core competency, to design the business knowledge. It is demand for temporary work and consulting met. Activities are done on demand at short notice without commitments. Sometimes the job markets are fluctuating where the functions are only designed for 3 months. If you are in tourism business, the entertainment function which is demanded by people is only for 3 months, that is the October to January is the most demanding seasons for most of the travel companies and for the hospitality companies. So, at this time you require many artists, designers and entertainers who would basically are very costly for the company to be employed. So, on demand you can call them for a short period of time, do your function and organize best of the activities for the tourist, and it is beneficial for both the people who are organizing functions and people who are participating. For them both, they save time, they save cost, and they can indulge in other activities also when these activities are not done. Cons of outsourcing: communication problems due to language and cultural barriers. There are time differentiations, technical and skill mismatches, security issues, and mismanagement and hierarchical problems in organizations. Sometimes outsourcing is difficult also because we have language problems almost all over the world. Even if the language is same, the accent is different. So, to understand people's accent, to connect with people at same platforms is very difficult because we have diversity in culture, diversity in terms of norms of behaving and in norms of connecting. So, the time difference, the cultural regional differences, the security issues, the fraud, the trust is less. So, as such outsourcing is a difficult concept which has to be adapted by business. Now, let us study the cost aspects, that is the labor saving offset by more expensive to contract, higher transportation cost, higher management cost, poor communication, cultural differences, lapses in technology infrastructure. Sometimes companies want to save the labor cost because the European countries and the American countries have very costly labor because they have to pay in dollar, but when this currency is translated or converted into other currencies, there is more money translated. So, you can get more labor, and the labor is also cheaper in China and India as the population is more in these countries, and there is excess of potential available because of unemployment. So, you can buy cheap labor from other countries, but this cost is compensated because the kind of the communication system developed are not updated, and sometimes the management contracts and the security issues and the cultural differences put lot of pressure which increases the cost for companies, and so this advantage can be offsetted if it is not managed properly. Evaluation criteria for giving outsourcing contracts: it is the past projects done, it is the people involved, the pricing aspects, the performance and the platforms created. Now, when we give the contracts to the companies or the firms where we are transferring our non-core functions, we need to look what are the past projects they have done, what connections they have in market, what are the platforms they have built, what is the kind of infrastructure they have created, and what is the efficiency level of the working, because if they are not efficient, they will spoil your branding, they will spoil your credibility in the market because they work on your behalf. So, we have to be very careful before we sign contracts with other companies. We need to evaluate them on the basis of the people and the prices which they give you. Offshore outsourcing benefits: of course, because of these disadvantages, we need to look into the other aspects where costs are saved, it increases productivity, we have time to market, we have access to expertise and skills, it is 24/7 operation, and it is highest software quality available. Though the labor cost is cheap and the formalities associated with are very high, but still we have access to best of the specializations, to best of the people who can understand the local cultures. We have, because of the difference in time zones, you can run the economy for 24 hours, because when India is sleeping, China is awake, or when India is sleeping, America is awake. So, because of those different zones, you can create a work culture where you can connect to customers at any time, because somebody is awake in some part of the world and they can look after the customers' grievances and problems. So, it is 24 hours that you are able to give services, and people are ready to take this kind of efficiency from company. Offshore outsourcing cost is basically increased because of the unclear objectives and the design requirements. It is lack of control, time zone differences, language barriers and domestic layoffs. Sometimes the cost goes high because you are not able to understand the hidden cost of the contracts, you are not able to understand the domestic problems of the company, when the company will be laid off or when the employees will leave, or what is the attrition rate of the employees in other countries, and it is the barriers of the government, the political and other aspects which forces some companies to close down and can put you in problems if they are not handled in an efficient way with trusted people in market. Now, let us study something about co-sourcing. Co-sourcing is a business practice where a service is performed by staff from inside an organization and also by an external service provider. It can be a service performed in concert with clients' existing internal audit department. Now you can outsource, but the control will be within. So, the internal department will work in partnership with outside specialized agency and would control the objects, or will control the objectives of the uh, operations within the company also, and for whatever function you are doing, or you have taken a contract from other company, you have to get the consent from the clients also before you handle their projects, that you can take partners from outside and handle their projects. Co-sourcing can serve to minimize sourcing risk, increase transparency. It is to increase the clarity and lend towards better control over the process outsource. So, when you do outsourcing and you have taken a yourself a project of a client, but because services are not available within your organization, so you are co-sourcing with other partners who will give you the best of the services. For that, you have to generally sign a contract and get the permission, and on basis of that you can do a partnership where you can increase the specialization, catalyze the work functions and decrease the cost and give the best possible operations at a low cost. Outsourcing and environmental standards. There are widespread claims that outsourcing has pushed environmental standards down in developing regions as countries compete to attract foreign projects and investment. Now, which investment is coming from foreign countries is a big issue for all the economies all over the world, because every country wants that investment, or the foreign direct investment needs to pump into their own country, because this will generally change the economic scenario in terms of increased projects, increased investment and lot of growth into business potential and generation of employment. So, most of the developing countries are competing to get the projects from foreign countries, and they are lowering their economic standards in relation to the environmental aspects, where little cost is designed to maintain the quality of environmental issues. So, if you lower the environmental standards and call foreign companies to set up the manufacturing units in your own country, it will cause lot of pollution and it will deteriorate the quality of life, and it will increase the risk of people's basic healthy life issues. Factors impacting outsourcing is lower wages, lower health, lower environmental regulations contribute to giving country a comparative advantage over another due to lower production cost. Now, when these developed countries bring their projects to developing countries over here in the domestic markets, the environmental regulations are low. This gives them the advantage that you do not have to invest more on quality of environment. So, this will lower the cost of the project, and the cost of the project will also be lowered because labor and the wages which you give to the employees is less, and then you are not taking the security of their health also. Like if a government basically employs people in any country, they have to look into their PF issues, they have to look into their medical aspects. But in temporary projects, because you do not sign a contract for very long term, so you are not looking into the health issues of the employees, and you are not paying much security to their life. A very good example of what happened into Bhopal gas strategy, where the company was not basically liable to the kind of disaster which they created for the life of people. So, because of the non-compliances to the legal issues, there was less burden on the companies. Now, when you take these issues to the court, it is a long term procedure, and it is after very long time that people can get money for their health issues. So, it is difficult to work with companies who without signing long term contracts can enter any domestic zone and put the life of employees at risk. Now, let us study world markets and outsourcing issues. We have countries like Mexico competes with China over Canadian and American markets. Its National Commission for Environmental Cooperation has not been active in enacting or enforcing regulations to prevent environmental damage from increasingly industrialized export processing zones. Now, we have rich countries like Canada and America who take up their projects to countries like Mexico and China, because here the National Commission for Environmental is not adding up lot of cost, or they are not making very stringent regulations which are popular in other countries. So, you can transform your operations which are more risky, which generate more pollution, and which generally are tough to be carried in your own country where the standards are high, where to compensate environmental quality the cost goes very high, where the taxation is high. So, you try to save the cost, but then this is a ethical issue that if something cannot be done in your own country where you are not damaging your own environmental issues, how can we damage the other markets and the other environments where people are not aware, or the countries are not rich, or their commissions are not very active, or the government is not taking any concern. So, this has to be an international issue which needs ethical concern and some ethical charter to be looked upon. Similarly, since the signing of the NAFTA, heavy industries have increasingly moved to the US, which has comparative advantage due to its abundant presence of capital and well developed technology. Now, since the companies can establish the operations anywhere in the world because of the international liberalization or globalization, most of the good companies are moving to China, even from developing countries, because lot of ample of technology and ample of infrastructure is available. So, best of the operations which are easy, which are intellectual, and which require a lot of profits, they are moving to US, and whereas the operations which are more risky, the margins are less, functions are difficult, they are moving to the less developed part of the world. So, this is differentiating the world into two zones: rich countries getting best of the research, best of the intellectual functions, and best of the industries and best of the technologies, where the infrastructure goes to a higher level, because the investment in R&D and development comes to these countries, and whereas the other countries basically get less or non-core functions, where there is no research and there is less safety and there is less development of intellectual aspects also. A further example of environmental regulation with the objective of protecting trade incentives have been in the numerous exemptions to carbon taxes in European countries during the 1990s. In 1990s, when there was no taxation for more emission of carbon, most of the industries were established in Europe, but after the environmental concern and the regulations and high cost to manage and high taxation, these industries have moved to the other parts of the world, and most of the European countries now have become rich in most of the banking sector, where London has been popular for development of one of the most uh, rich banking industries. The country has one of the best banks and is the international financial market, which has emerged into media, finances and banking, giving consultancy to all over the world. So, they get one of the best intellectual markets in terms to generate money, and whereas the operational and the other industries have moved to the other parts of the world. Now, let us study the organizational reasons for outsourcing. They are focus on service, focus on core capabilities, transform and change the organization and increase the flexibility. The operational reasons are improve performance for quality and productivity, obtain expertise, skill and technology, and for risk management. Study the financial reasons for outsourcing is transfer assets to the outsourcing partner, free up the resources for investment and other purposes. Let us study the cost driven reasons, transform fixed costs into variable cost, reduce costs through outsourcing partner efficiency. Now, let us understand this concept. How do we transform fixed cost into variable cost? If you set up organization structure, it will involve lot of cost, and to get the break even point, the gestation period will be somewhere around about 10 years. Now, there are industries and there are factories or there are concepts who are earning more when they are investing in variable cost. You have a concept of hotel, hospitality sector name brand like Oyo, who does not owns any property all over the world, but they are earning more than most of the big properties in the world. Like they are outsourcing the occupational occupancy of rooms from the hotels and putting on their websites. So, they are doing more business than most of the big hotels. They do not have any property, they do not invest money on fixed cost, but they, because of outsourcing through their websites, they are earning more than other hotels. So, they have converted their fixed cost where they are not investing in infrastructure, where they are not bringing up buildings and infrastructure, but because of technology and specialization, they are able to earn more than the hotels. Revenue driven reasons is expand and grow with the help of another organization, obtain access to outsourcing partners network. This is basically you expand because you generally go in a partnership concept. Walmart has grown up as a retail chain because they have partnered with big farmhouses, they have partnered with big companies, MNCs like Procter and Gamble, big pharma companies and other aspects where they take goods at rate contract, they outsource many functions and they have created a retail structure which is one of the biggest in the world to give you products at the lowest margins. Now, let us study online outsourcing. Online outsourcing is the internet based version of outsourcing. This process is when one department or indeed a whole area of work transforms tasks and projects to the third party. Activities related to this kind of outsourcing are, it is programming and web designing, multimedia production, logo design, search engine optimization, translations, research and editorial work. Now, online industry is a very big industry where lot of manual work is related, where you need to design content, you need to design lot of research to be studied, and for maintenance of websites also lot of material has to be created. So, this function can be outsourced to specialists or people who are sitting in other parts of the world, and you can maintain your blog, your website or your marketing also, where SEO, that is search engine optimization, where you want to rank the pages higher for online marketing can be done in an easy way. With offshoring, a variant of outsourcing, respective tasks can be situated in another country. This could be both business task or indeed business processes. We can outsource both. You can outsource an activity or a task, or you can outsource the total process. It depends what you want to do with your total assembly line. So, maybe you are maintaining a website, some part of it you can outsource and some part you can do on your own. So, it is offshoring is giving work to the far off destinations. And what is nearshoring? Nearshoring is bringing work near to your local destination or near to your country, so that the communication is faster and the similarities of thinking into terms of regional cultures and values is same. Now, let us study home shoring. This is a variant of outsourcing. It is described as a location of third party services which are not undertaken by companies, but by individuals working from home. This form of working is also known as home office or often telecommuting. So, this is people or individuals working from the home offices and contributing to government or to very big companies, where we are not giving any contract to third party. There are individual people, designers, there are specialists, there are doctors who are contributing lot to the industry development, and they are contributing lot who are working from their home desk and serving the big industries to grow and develop in a better way. Through outsourcing, a company can relieve itself of the secondary task and concentrate on core issues, thus improving its efficiency. Peter Drucker expressed it, do what you can do best and outsource the rest. So, this is the gist of the lecture, where we have said that whatever you can do it, you should do it yourself. This is the best solution or the best work which you can do for your company. But if you cannot do it and you are not specialized, you should always take the help of the best people available and also take the help of the specialist available in market to give a good package to the clients. Now, let us study the summary of this lecture. In this lecture, we have studied the outsourcing concept and importance. Outsourcing is a big word for business industry. The pros and the cons of outsourcing define the difficulties and the advantages. The advantages are more than the cost involved. It is the relocation of labor, the relocation of functions, specializations, and collecting them in such a way and combining them in such a way to give the best package to the people at a cost which is affordable. We are able to access lot of things because lot of countries have coordinated to design good functions. Maybe it is Google, Microsoft or other countries, but they have outsourced, they have home sourced, they have collected, but they have given you the best solutions collected from all over the world. I hope the students must have understood the concept of outsourcing. Thank you.